This is the Haag-Streit BP, and it's similar to the BQ, except that it only has 3 different mags, whereas the BQ has 5 different mags. But they both have a rotating drum mag changer, and they both, by not being used, turned that often, or age, they get stiff. So both of them. So there's another video on refurbing this drum assembly, and there's some differences with the BP. As you can tell, immediately look at it, you can tell the difference. This is black, this is metal, and this head will not fit on the BP. The BP head will not fit on the BQ mag changer. So there's a little different design. So we're going to show the differences of taking this drum out versus a BQ, and of course both kind you'll have to take it off by using your 5mm Allen wrench to loosen that bottom bolt and take it off. And similarly, we will turn this lock ring counterclockwise to remove the head. As you'll notice on the BQ, it's just a simple operation of lining up the pin on the head and locking it, but on the BP it's a little different setup, where there are two pins. They call these bolt pins that engage when you turn to lock it. So these pins go inside and lock on to your head. And as on the other video of the BQ, to get to the drum assembly, you have to take off the handles and everything. And to get to the lock screw that's holding the drum mag in, you have to take off these 4 bolts. Remove that, and you have access to the lock screw in there that you take, loosen, then you can pull your drum out and clean and lube it. But on the BP, it doesn't have access to the front to get to the lock pin. This is all one piece. So the lock pin is on this side. The lock screw is on this side. And to find it, there's a little cover disc right here that needs to come out, and it has a little groove in it to collapse. So when you push those two, push them together, that gives space for this cover disc to come out. So you can squeeze and pull it out, or you might be able to just pull it on out. So this cover disc comes out and it has this little expansion. So when it goes in, it would squeeze to put it in, and then when it releases, then it locks in place. So with that removed, you can turn this outer dial. It has a hole in it, and you will find the lock screw as you turn to just below the center. You can find access to the lock screw. And using this is a 1.2 by 40, we can access that lock screw and release it so that we can slide the drum mag assembly. We can push it out. So, and while we're here, I'll just show you these pins. These are called bolt pins, and to get those out, you would have to remove these side springs. These are called a side spring. It gives you a little space to turn it out, and you can pull this spring out, and there's room to get this pin. Now I'll just tell you that this pin, it's longer on one edge and shorter. It's got a bevel in it. So the longer side goes to the out this side. The smaller side of this pin goes inside. So if you had to replace that pin or something, just remember the longer side is on the outside, the shorter side is on the inside. But you may have to replace those pins sometime. I'm going to go ahead and I've already taken this apart and cleaned all the grease off of it, but I'm going to just show you the steps on how to do that again in case you haven't looked at the other video. But we would take this nut off the knob with either some needle nose pliers or this special tool that Haag-Streit sells. You would release these screws. There's a spring washer underneath that, and you might want to look at where you're taking it off, just as to remind yourself that the highest mag is going to be the smallest lens. So when you're putting it back, whether it's the BQ or the BP, if you're wondering where to put this handle back on, just turn your drum mag to the smallest lens there, and you know that's your highest number. And of course, again, we would take off these two screws and we would release this spring. After you've released the spring, taking the plate off and the screws, taking this handle off, then it's time, and you can go ahead and be cleaning the grease off if you want so you can handle it, but it's time to release that lock screw, and it's going to be right in that position. Of course, I'm using the 1.2 by 40. Stick it in, and it might have some kind of lock lubricant on it. So you might want to put some little dab of acetone. I'm not sure if they put any on there or not, but want to make sure. And it's a very small screw. It's a M2 by 2.5, so it's really small. You're going to have a small screwdriver. So I've loosened it to where I can't really turn this dial any because it's sticking above that. So that way I know I've got it out far enough. And that lock screw is holding this washer in, this plate. And that's what we need to free up so we can pull the drum assembly out. Now once you have that off, and you might want to clean if there's any grease out here or anything, and then we're going to put this down on a hard surface and push down on it to push the drum assembly out this way. Now I've already done it, so it's going to look easier the way I do it, but if you've got this screw out far enough so that you can't turn this dial anymore, you know you've got it released enough, and it's not holding this plate washer in anymore, so that's not stopping it from coming up. But it might be very hard because this is very tight. But it might not be for me because I've already cleaned it. And then that will release your drum assembly. And again, what you need to clean is the inside there, and it's not rubbing out here, so this should be clean because this is the outside of this plate washer. The outside doesn't, but it's the inside. When you release that, now this is going to be tight on here too, depending on how stuck your mag was. This is going to be really tight because that's what was restricting the flow. Well, one side, this side and this side, but this is usually the main culprit. So you might have to keep turning, twisting, so you can release that washer plate and clean all the lubricant, all the old grease off of it. And same here, clean all the grease on that surface, all the old grease off of this surface using something like this. And while you've got this out, if the inside of your objective lens has dust or things on it, you might want to clean that. And if you clean the outside and look through, then you know that the dust is on the inside. So you might want to clean that and blow it out. So when it comes time to relubing and putting everything up together, it's going to be just like the BQ. We're going to use a number 2 grease, and we're going to put grease on the inside here, the inside here, just a light coat, just a very light coat. It's going to push out any excess out, so you might as well just put a very light coat. And we're going to put just a light film on the inside of this plate washer. We don't have to put anything on the outside. And you want to be careful about how much grease you're putting on the inside here, because this is what really grabs your drum assembly is the grease on this side. So you want to be very careful about how much you put on there. Just a very light coat. And so I'm going to do that, and then we'll put it back together. When it comes time to putting the grease on, remember to use a very thin grease, either a number 2, which I don't think they make anymore, but it's been substituted with a number 17 grease from Haag-Streit. But it should be a grease with very low viscosity, because you don't need much friction holding it. You want it to be a nice light grease. And I'm using a little Q-tip to lubricate everything. I've lubricated in here and around here and around here, and on this area I just put some right in the corner. Right in the corner. I don't need to put any out here, just in the corner. And on my disc plate, big washer, I'm not putting anything just yet. What I'm going to do is slide it on with the grease I've already have on here. I'm going to turn it. I can already feeling how it's pulling. It pulls that plate. I'm going to pull it back off. And you can see that just what I put on that corner in there, it flattened everything out. And so there's grease around here and here. But to me, I think that's too much. So I'm going to take some of that, wipe some of that grease off, because I don't want a lot of grease in there, because it's just going to make it stiff in the future. So I'm wiping that off. I'm gently wiping the extra grease off. I've left a little film on there, so I haven't taken it all off. And there's grease on there. That's enough. I'm going to put this back on. Okay, that should be enough. Just a slight filming of grease. what you want to do is try to duplicate what the factory, how the factory put their grease in. So just pay attention to, as you're taking everything apart, to notice the amount of grease that's on it originally and try to duplicate it. So there shouldn't be much grease on there. That's why I'm being careful about that aspect. I've got grease already in here. I'm ready to insert it. If you want to, you can find the spot where your lock screw attached and just use that as a guide. It doesn't have to be that way. And when we reinsert it, before you do, you might want to check, make sure your lens is clean. If you clean the outside and you still see something in there, it could be because it's on the inside, and now would be the best time to do that. So we're going to insert it back in. We find where our lock screw is, and we're just going to aim. I'm just going to aim to where that lock screw was originally. Doesn't have to be that way. And when you insert it, you can see it's raised up, so it's not down all the way. So you're going to have to push this round disc, plate, washer, whatever you call it, and you're going to have to push it down into, and you might hear some clicking, and that's how you'll know that you've gotten it in. The screw is still out, so it's not in the way. Let's see if we can push that in. Okay, it looks like we're in. We're in all the way, and as you notice, it's flush, so we know we're down all the way. Now we can tighten our lock screw back up with our 1.2 by 40. And when you tighten it, you want to get it snug, but not too much, because you don't want to strip the screw out. And for the next time, you'll have to do it. So just get it snug. That should be holding. Now we can put our spring back in, and we'll use our needle nose pliers to do that. Just grab it sort of on a corner and use your thumb on one side so that it doesn't go flying if you miss. And make sure the spring goes into the little indentation it has on each side. And we're able to put our plate back on. These steps are similar to the steps in the BQ. So if you know how to do that, everything else is pretty straightforward. But I'm just going to do it in case you aren't looking at that video. I think each time I do this, I find another way to make it a little bit quicker, a little shorter, a little more efficient. So you may not be getting my latest idea of how to do it. Now, after I attach everything and put it back onto the slit lamp, I'm probably going to have to readjust the height of the image of the light, because anytime you go into this refurb, things aren't exactly aligned as they were as far as up and down. So you'll notice they have some little adjusting screws here. One is a Phillips and then one is a straight edge. And you would loosen the Phillips you would loosen the Phillips and then adjust with the adjusting screw up or down to make your light perfectly centered up and down. And you'll know which diaphragm to turn it to, because you can see where one light is just a little bit smaller than your view, and you can tell when the light is too low or too high. So that's the adjustment. And then be sure to tighten that Phillips back up after you adjusted it. So for now, I'm just going to put the handles back on, but once I install it back on the slit lamp, I'm probably going to be taking everything back off just to get to these adjusting screws. Okay, you've got that on. Now you can put your cover disc back on. Remember, it has that gap, so it collapses as you put it in, and then it will expand. And make sure everything is working here like it's supposed to. And I believe this, you just fold this in and push it in until it clicks in. There's not much holding it in or out. So, and when it's time to put the handles on, I hope you marked which handle, on what side it was going to. I put a little R on here. And if you're wondering where it's going to fit on the two screw heads, your handle. So you're wondering, well, which one? Well, you can turn to the smallest lens and then get the highest number of your handle, your knob, and that's going to correspond to that. Same thing on the BQ, the smallest lens and the highest mag. And you can see our holes, they're going to fit right over those screws. Make sure your spring washer is inside. Tighten that with either your Haag-Streit tool, which you probably don't have. You can use this, and we'll have to hold the handle, or you can put the other side on and hold it while you're tightening. Okay, so this is the left side, and I have a little L on that handle, and going to correspond. I got my 25 there, So I'm going to find my 25. Notice the two holes going to correspond with those screws. Make it fit in, and then you can put the screw back in. Now you have something to hold either there, or you could hold that and snug these screws up. So you might want to check your lenses, make sure that you didn't get any smudges on them, and you can practice turning it. It should turn freely. You should hear a nice click because everything is clean and has the new lubricant on with a light coat, and this should last many years. And then you'll install your head back on, install it back onto your slit lamp, and then check your diaphragm. Turn your diaphragm and your mag to where your circle is just fills that. Then you can tell if it needs to go up or down, and then just remove the cap again and readjust it till it's right. Over here, I just wanted to show you this photograph, this diagram of what we just did. And this is the all-evasive lock screw right here. It's an M2 by 2.5. And here's our cover disc that we have to take off to get to that screw. And here's our parts and the names. And here's the springs, and this is the bolt pin. Remember, it's got a beveled edge, and the longer side goes to the outside. This smaller edge goes towards the inside. You have to replace those. And then here's the part numbers. So it's basically similar to the BQ refurbishment, just a few differences with the lock screw in different places, but the mechanism is very similar, and the refurb is very similar. So I think you can do it. Hope this helps.